machine gun. Born a free man, die a free man, even if that's on the run.
Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome. I'm joined tonight by JF. Welcome, JF. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. I've been spending all day reading your book, and I have to say, it's a really interesting thesis you got there, man.
Yes, it's a profound and very important thesis that we should think about and talk about, but no one does.
Well, the implications are kind of dark if it's not interrupted, I guess, if it's not changed. And you know, it's like all of these technologies, right? This is the book. If anybody's unfamiliar, we will show on screen also. But if anybody's unfamiliar with this, it's a pretty cool book, and you're kind of illustrating this evolution from DNA to from RNA to DNA to then something synthetic, right? Is that an accurate description?
Well, yeah, but I say in general, it's not doesn't even have to be synthetic. I say there's a phenomenon in biology that we missed, that we didn't talk about and we didn't think about. And it's this phenomenon by which life forms are creating stuff around them. And the stuff sometimes becomes their new genes. And that's very dangerous when the stuff you start to create can outcompete you.
I guess that makes sense, right? That the tools become such an extension, such a near extension of ourselves that they kind of fuse with us. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, it's more than fuse. It's they start farming you. The big problem is of a phenotypic revolution is that the things that you create, there's no guarantee that they don't become one day your farmer and your absolute. They gain absolute control over you, over your evolutionary destiny, and it's not looking good if you're an intelligent species that starts producing so many things out there that are better than us, better at storing data, better at thinking, better at now producing music with AI. It's too much for a life form to handle. And it's so much worse than what Terminator told us. It's not even a war you can win against a bunch of robots if you have the right guns. It's a war in which you have no chance because you created something that you want to keep going, that you need, that eventually you fall addicted to, and it eventually replaces you.
I can see that with stuff we already understand, like the smartphone kind of adapted and fused right into everyone's lives so seamlessly that, you know, most people can't think of existing without their phone. It's almost like a drug withdrawal when they're separated from it. I could see how this could be,
Absolutely.
you know, taken to an even higher level with this AI stuff. So let me ask you that, I guess. Then, so you know, with this AI stuff that has really, truly came into its own or begun to anyway in the last few years, are you seeing this on course with what you were thinking, or does this kind of fuse into the wider thesis? Because I know you talked about CRISPR and you gave the example of, you know, successfully editing the genes of your child to make their life better, but that having a sort of downstream effect that we couldn't be predicted. Does this kind of play into that? Because I read recently that Sam Altman just invested in some kind of gene editing thing. What do you think of this?
Absolutely. Well, in 2018, I described what was going to happen, but I thought of it as going to happen in the next 1,000 years. But it happened mostly during the next 10 years. And amazingly, we're very much within the phenotypic revolution. We're stepping into it very clearly as I still live. I expected to eventually be proven right after I die, but I'm being proven right during my lifetime. And yes, it's exactly as I described. Room full of servers, computing, knowing more about the human phenotype, and eventually capable of predicting genes and their consequences. And it's going to be too tempting for humans to modify themselves, because with our empathy and our short-sightedness, we don't realize that fighting Alzheimer may sound like a good thing, but it's not a good thing. It's down the line, we will cause more suffering by fighting these diseases than we do by eliminating them.
So let me actually kind of go backwards a little bit, because I jumped right into the kind of the deeper pool right away. So I find this very interesting, because you were a person that was a scientist, and what made you go into streaming, man? Because I was digging up stuff to talk to you about, and I was looking up like really old stuff, like early alt-right stuff. So what made you go from like scientists, examining monkey brains in labs and stuff, to like talking to alt-right personalities on Gariépy Live and stuff like that? What made you do that jump?
Well, in 2015, I was annoyed at the academia. It sucks because you constantly have to ask for permission to do stuff. You have to ask for your next 2 years of projects. You have to present them to the government, apply to a council of ethics. They accept the experiment, then you do it, they fund you. There's so much permission asking that I thought, well, I can't continue in this. And then you have the peer review process, absolutely corrupted, all friends favoring each other. And I'm like, this whole system is corrupted. And on the other hand, I'm starting YouTube, and I'm making these little videos about cognition, neuroscience, and people like it. And eventually, I make so much money from these little videos and the super chat economy that rises. I'm like, wow, I can literally make more money doing live streaming than I do in the academia. And on top of it, I don't have to ask for permission for thinking. And at the same time, I had the idea of the revolutionary phenotype that was growing in my head. And I was like, this is too big for the academia. I cannot stay a professor in the academia. They're gonna call me crazy. This theory is too important. And there's no way I'm gonna get an approval to develop this theory. So I'm like, I have to find a way to fund my efforts and at the same time become a free thinker who can write a book about an important theory. So YouTube showed itself, and back then I was funding a lot of hopes in YouTube. I was seeing the rise of Wikipedia, of social media, and I was like, wow, this is a new way to approach knowledge seeking, truth seeking, and it's completely uncontrollable by the elite, and it's meritocratic, and people will like and repost your stuff if you're right. And so I thought those are new tools that were not available to the generation of thinkers before me. And I thought the world, the normie world and academia as a whole doesn't matter anymore. It's all going to fall. There's no reason why you would send your children to be educated in brick and mortar stuff other than you're looking for a daycare center because you need to go to work 9 to 5. And I was like, this is so efficient. YouTube, direct viewership, direct learning. There's no way the brick and mortar system survives this. And I still think this, but I think it's going very slow. But I still think that down the line, the school doesn't exist anymore.
No, I think as a broader prediction, that's certainly true. That's certainly true. I don't think there's a reason, especially with the incredible investment that's required for most brick and mortar educations, that anybody's going to be doing this. That might be arguable as to the STEM fields. I don't know. What do you think that applies to STEM too? Because you come from a science thing. I mean, do you think you're going to be able to do like hard bench lab science type stuff? I mean, because you know what I mean. You kind of need that hands-on.
There will always be a need for laboratories and places for hands-on stuff, but this is such a small part of what the university offers. You actually don't get much lab work until you reach PhD level. So that the whole system that gets you to have a baccalaureate, even in engineering, even in biology, you'll see one course with some lab experience. Most of it will be virtualized, I believe. Even the lab experience will be kind of available through interaction with AI, maybe virtual spaces. So down the line, you don't really need that much. And anyways, the current university does not give you practical knowledge. And when I
Right.
look back at what formed my views that allowed me to write The Revolutionary Phenotype, a very small part of it comes from the official education I've received. Despite the fact that I've reached the highest levels, postdoc at Duke, awards from everywhere, every government, international awards for being a public educator, most of my ideas that led me to The Revolutionary Phenotype actually comes from my own research, Dawkins, people who kind of evolved beside the system to an extent.
Well, that's interesting. You characterize it as a rebellion, and it's interesting that there is a rebellion in your journey from academia into alt-right streaming, and it kind of carries over even into the idea of a revolutionary phenotype as it is on a sort of cellular level. Um, that's quite a thing. So, would you do anything different having all this experience? What would you do different, if anything?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I'm not a man of regrets. I take
Excellent.
paths in life, and I adore the paths I've taken. Of course, I've been the victim of massive persecution, attacks, lies, attacks on my family, but I regret nothing because in the end, when I look back, you always make the right decisions based on your current input. And there's nothing that I've learned anyways that would change my decisions. I always acted by belief of heart. And I believe that the academia is misguided. I believe that they have abandoned the search for truth. I believe they cannot even confront basic truths about the white race, blacks, everything, because everything is guided morally. And I got out of a moral system to search, to draw my own path in the search for truth. And there's no way you can regret this, even if there's hardship along the way. It's like, bring some more. I don't care. I'm on a quest for truth.
That's a fantastic answer, man. I mean, what you said is so true. There are so many people who were they came from the scientific world and they came to confront these kind of truths and were dragged for it, but I don't think they regret it. I don't think they would have regretted it. Rushton, Shockley, like there's a whole bunch of people who wanted to address these things and had really very impressive credentials as well. And even though they get attacked by the system and as it were and all this, it's still too important. It's too important to speak to this. It's too important to prioritize truth seeking above any other kind of social cost that's going to be incurred. I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Because or else epistemology and the search for truth becomes a sword. If you just say you cannot say that white people are better on anything, if you just impose this on the academia, then suddenly academia starts searching for reasons why white people are outperforming so much on certain measures. Now it develops false explanations like, oh, well, it's because of poverty. Oh, well, it's because of racism. And it's like, as soon as you do this, you enter a program that is a program of political changing of the world, and one that comes to the systematic disadvantage of white people. So we cannot keep taking the money of white people to fund research that is actually weaponized research against them.
Absolutely. Somebody in chat brought it up just as I was pulling it up. So this is obviously James Watson, who was the co-founder or co-discoverer of DNA. So he was dragged at the end of his career for basically saying that biologically blacks had a lower IQ. And he even went as far as to say, if you've had to work with them or deal with them, this is true. And they wrecked this man's career. They took away his Nobel Prize. They smeared his name through the mud. All this kind of stuff. And I mean, how does this get corrected? Do you think this can? Is there a correction point in which the society as a whole starts to realize that this process of trying to enforce comfortable falsehoods over unpleasant truth, or at least from their perspective, that this is a bad idea? And maybe we're seeing the beginning of this with the sort of death of woke, as a lot of people are saying. Do you agree, or do you think it's not so much? What do you think?
Yeah, I believe a fix is coming, but it's not going to be a fix of the institutions. The institutions, you have to throw them down and completely destroy them. So it's like the brick and mortar academia is locked in right now with lawfare potentially if they act in any way that is racially discriminatory. So it's like they live under fear, and so they cannot pursue the truth. They've locked themselves into a position where they can only lie to themselves and lie to others. But the fix that comes is the alternative rising, which is free internet freedom, basically. With internet freedom, we can do better than the academia, eventually to the point where the academia isn't even needed. So with AI coming, you have a full training possible of a child up to adult age, and he's going to have a better teacher than the average elementary school teacher. And with alternative paths to publishing science, like Amazon KDP, where I published my book, and I made a living of this book. To me, it was important to sell it at high price because I was like, I need to live from this. There's no government grant. There's no salary coming from the university for little courses on the Monday. So I had to succeed. Now, the reason I developed this path, and others have been pioneering it before me, like Richard Dawkins, but it was very rare for a non-Jewish thinker to just put all of his eggs in the same basket and say, I'm just going to live from a book, because the book industry itself is subject to its own corruption and its own ethnic preferences. But I said it should be possible. And the more that is possible, the more people who are outside of the academia actually get to know more and better than the professors that are still stuck inside. And there's lots of professors of biology out there who still have no idea of the theory of phenotypic revolution, and they still teach their old courses about mRNA, enzymes, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like they miss the point. My book gets them to a better understanding of these phenomena.
So, do you think that basically, you said it was blah blah blah, right? It's like it sounds like you're saying they're fixated a little too much on the mechanics and they're missing the bigger picture. Is that what you're trying to get at with the revolutionary phenotype? Is the zoomed out bigger picture of where this is all going?
Well, it's the mechanistic picture, because it's one thing to say, well, it does look like it does look like RNA preceded DNA. That's one thing. But to understand what happened 4 billion years ago so that DNA became life. And that is what they're missing. It's like you can describe the sequence. You can say, yes, there's molecular evidence that RNA does pretty well on its own. So probably it was there before DNA. But why is it that, given the selfish gene of Richard Dawkins, because you have to understand how impossible a phenotypic revolution is if you start with the standard training of biology. A phenotypic revolution is a piece of your body that becomes life itself. It's like literally a civilization was born in your stomach, and it took your dead corpse and founded a nation over it. That is what a phenotypic revolution is at the molecular level and at the societal level. Now, the selfish gene bars this, and the dogma of biology, which are very true. I'm not calling them dogma to mock them, but the math of the theory of evolution is so powerful against this. And what Richard Dawkins showed in the most precise mathematical way, and the best argument probably ever made in science, is that life cannot produce other life, because other life always comes in competition and always loses. Now, the theory of phenotypic revolution is precisely to cover these exceptions where the selfish gene isn't true, where the gene fails in its selfishness. The gene produces something and it gets beaten by it.
Wow. That's a lot to digest. So how close did Dawkins get? Because, I mean, you certainly reference him a lot in your book.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so he was kind of onto this, though, I guess, is what you're kind of implying, but he didn't quite. Okay.
Dawkins thought in his head of the theory of phenotypic revolution. Then he wrote books about how that's impossible, and his books are so important because, yes, the selfish gene first. He literally says it. He says DNA might have taken over something that pre-existed. I don't know. Maybe it did. But in any case, it did it so well that nothing is left alive anymore. So basically, the ancient life form has been raped into inexistence. That is what Dawkins says. And then he publishes the extended phenotype. And he's like, I'm gonna even think about phenotypic revolution more. I'm gonna invent a situation in which a revolutionary phenotype shows up, but it's gonna lose. It's gonna lose because it can't win against natural selection. Because what is natural selection telling us? Let's take a little toy model problem to understand all of this. Natural selection tells us whatever you do that's punishing to your genes is punishing to your genes, and therefore next generation you don't exist. So suppose that we have, say, a bad idea in culture, a bad idea that tells you, say, start making babies at 53 years old. Now, that bad idea, what's the chance that it spreads? Well, maybe you have Facebook and maybe people are kind of naive and maybe some of them ingest that idea and live by it. But if you wait to 53-year-old to get babies, you're not going to have babies. So next generation, there is no one left like you. And the people that are surviving this meme, this bad idea, they're all a little different from you. They're all a little less likely to trust a meme on Facebook that says, wait for 53-year-old before you make babies. And therefore, the world constantly advances killing bad ideas. Like a wood chipper. The bad ideas get into the wood chipper. They all disappear every generation. And what's left at the end is something like religion that says, don't be gay. Have sex with a member of the other sex, be an hetero. Jesus wants you to do that. You go for it. So that is the mechanism by which culture advances. And the extended phenotype describes this very well by saying, but Richard Dawkins somehow in his refusal to apply the extended phenotype to humans, he misses the fact that bad ideas are going to be rejected just like bad beaver dams, Richard. Bad ideas are going to be rejected just like bad bird wings. And this is what Richard Dawkins refuses to understand, not because he doesn't even have the intellect to understand it. He knows it's true. But he says in his book, I'm not going to think like this because it's dangerous down the line. It's going to favor racism, Hitler, Nazis, etc. So we have here the beginning of the moral abandonment of the truth for political preferences. My message is quite simple. Richard Dawkins was right about everything when he was talking about the truth, but he refused to see the truth. He refused to apply it to humans. And therefore, we're stuck with this breach of understanding. If you abandon this breach, you'll realize that, yes, bad ideas, memes, as he calls them, memes that are bad will punish the bearer of the bad meme makers and the bad meme carriers. And therefore, the interface between a birthing life form like human culture and genes is absolutely safe for the native life form. That is, we will not destroy human civilization with memes. We will not have bad parasitic ideas that lead us to suicide, because every time they do, they disappear with us.
Yeah, the consequences are pretty immediate, I guess, within a generation or two, right? Because you cannot perpetuate an idea like the example you gave of have babies at 53. I mean, that won't survive a generation, really. So that absolutely makes sense. You already went to where I was going to go next. Is did he ignore the obvious answer, the obvious correct answer in the thesis because there was political motive to ignore it? And you already answered that, but how much do you think that's a thing, man? I mean, I think this is exactly the thing that's ate up the entirety of not just academia, but just scientific progress across the West, to the point where it's like, I don't think we're making that much anymore. I think it's really stalled out quite a bit.
Absolutely. In biology, the last exciting thing was 2018, the revolutionary phenotype. I'm not even saying this because I'm the author. But objectively, we haven't progressed in biology, and we won't progress for the next 30 years. Why? Because a bunch of people have decided to destroy meritocracy within the academia. And Richard Dawkins was one of the first to do it. Richard Dawkins in, I believe it was the 90s or maybe even 2000s, but Susan Blackmore, eventually a kind of leftist woman, comes out with the book The Meme Machine, an erroneous book, but like the revolutionary phenotype exists to correct Susan Blackmore, basically. Susan Blackmore comes out, and Richard Dawkins writes her to that book, and therefore drags a lot of attention to the meme machine and throws the entire academia in the wrong direction, because the meme machine is exactly pursuing the error of Richard Dawkins of seeing human culture as a threatening kind of life form, parasitic, bad idea type of thing. And what we needed to do to move on from that is the revolutionary phenotype. We had to discover what is a truly threatening alternative life form. What is that thing that could own all of us, that could farm all of us? And it's not a meme, it's not a bad idea. It needs a step above this. And that's what I call a revolutionary phenotype. Now, amazingly, Richard Dawkins writes his intro to the meme machine, gives absolute exposure and massive sales to Susan Blackmore. But he says in his intro, I'm not sure she's right, but she's a woman. But she's a woman. And it would be nice to have women in science, wouldn't it? So there you have it. The DEI woman favoring has led science astray for 20 to 30 years just because a guy thought it would be nice to have non-penis having biology professors in academia. That's where it started. And now it's even worse. Now we need the brown, we need the black, and so there's not even a place for excellence to exist when you have to select people based on skin color and genitalia.
No, it's entirely the wrong prioritization. It totally destroys meritocracy. And, you know, the competitive meritocracy is what drove forth scientific discovery for so long. I mean, this is why we're sitting here under artificial lights. I mean, you know, people were, you know, men, that was another means of male competition, right? It was, before that, it was about discovery. It was about discovering new locations, new places, new land that we could conquer, new places, new civilizations we could build, new, you know, this kind of stuff. And eventually, you know, there wasn't even that much. Now it's time, okay, let's develop new ways of living that improve our life. And I mean, if you really look at some of the inventors, I mean, there was an incredible male competition between them. And I think that as much as the general glory of it or wealth or anything else, it was as much to one up and own the other guy and say, fuck that guy, I'm better than him. My light bulb kicks ass, his light bulb dies in, you know, a year. This was kind of like the way of things. And I think if we destroy this, and I think we have largely, then we're going to get to the point where we have kind of what we have today, where everything is a Chinese plastic knockoff of something.
Absolutely. The destruction of meritocracy exists in the academia, but it exists also in the everyday world, in the economy. It's like people are thinking of employment as these titles that you're given just to occupy a space and just to make money from it. But we don't think of standards anymore. And the standard has become, do you fit the new project for the division of Western civilization's loot, basically? As the cineast Denis Arcand in Quebec describes through his movie, The Fall of the American Empire, we are essentially taking the bag of money and saying, we're all going to give you a little share because we've been unfair, because it's all been going to white male. Let's try giving it a little bit to everyone. But in doing so, you absolutely destroy any sort of competitive interest. And white male, you know, there's lots of complaints by corporations these days that they have to employ H-1Bs. They have to import workers because basically they need slaves. Yeah. But the white males that you've rejected from your corporate world, we're not interested anymore at going to a trust and safety human relationship course teaching us how to rape not to rape before we get employed at your place. We're not interested in this condescension. We were in for the big game. We were in for the competition. We were ready to lose at 99% and fail all the time and restart and restart. We had it inside of us, but you destroyed all of it because trying isn't even worth it. If at the end I'm told that the other guy got the job because he was black.
No, that's extremely well put. I think that there is this effort, this wider. Maybe I can get your input on this one too. This wider thing to destroy white people, I think, has engulfed everything. Obviously, it's engulfed even the media. That one's just glaringly obvious. I don't think anyone can miss that at this point. The sciences, I think you have to be in them probably and be somewhat of a racially aware person to see that. But you can sense it. I'm sure people that even aren't very racially aware can sense it. Beyond the anti-white sentiment, there is anti-male sentiment. Absolutely. Even at the bachelor's degree level of colleges. I mean, I was going to college for bachelor's as late as 2015, and you could feel it. I was finishing up then, but you could absolutely feel this anti-you sentiment, and this absolutely stifles everything. And I think that this whole thing. We would just kind of broadly refer to as white genocide. This is going to have a very ugly end if it's not somehow stopped in any kind of I don't know, in any kind of deliberate manner sooner rather than its ultimate conclusion. If we don't find a way to actually intervene in it, I think then that's the non-intervention result. I think will be far worse. Do you agree with that? Does that jive, or do you think that maybe some other thing?
Oh, absolutely. I agree. We are withdrawing, we are reconcentrating, and we are aware and noticing. And it goes hand in hand. The white genocide goes hand in hand with the attack against males. And you can see it even more than in a college. You will see it in family courts. You'll see it in child protective service processes. You'll see it in probate court. There is an active bureaucratic attack on maleness and on individual rights of men to lead a family. And when you attack the family, you attack the possibility for men to be legally contributing to the continuation of their people. And down the line, I see nothing else than war or withdrawal and reconcentration somewhere. Migration and war are the two mechanisms that men know to deal with the invasions of their liberty.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, men can feel it. Men can absolutely feel it. I was watching something earlier, just in passing, that was talking about the dating scene and the situation with that. And what isn't that a kind of an extension of it too, right? Where they were interviewing all these young women, or taking them, I guess, over TikToks. And they were laying out their criteria list, right? And it's the most amazing stuff. They have this long criteria list. Oh, you must do this. You must have that. You must have 6 figures plus. You must have at least one business. You must have at least one It's like, what is this? So eventually, they, of course, they do the math, and you find out, okay, well, they're really angling for 0.14% of the male population. So that's even with So this is all very untenable. There's no way that this is going to just hold up over a long period of time. At some point, this has to collapse in on itself. But like you said, war is a part of how these encroachments are dealt with. Do you think that it's on the table that it goes that way? Because a lot of people have been predicting this sort of thing for a while. I've heard civil war talk as long as I've been paying attention to this stuff.
Yeah, I don't think civil war next year, civil war not even in 5 years, but at some point, what happens is there will be a liberalization, an increasing liberalization of the liberal states and provinces. They will become more and more leftist, more and more androgynous, anti-male. And then you'll have a withdrawal to heartland and positions where Republican states might keep things fair for men. And then the problem is, to what extent is the federal government going to be used as a tool by leftists to make our lives unlivable in Republican states? Because they will have conquered basically the liberal states. They will make life unlivable for males there. They already do. I mean, I had to escape several states after several attacks, various attacks on my family, one after the other. So I think there will be first a reconcentration and then interstate conflict, which will be partly managed by Supreme Courts, and perhaps there will be some negotiation where the left will just tolerate that there are states where they don't have power. But eventually, down the line, it boils down to there will be a crushing federal government, just like there is in Canada, that decides to basically tax the lifestyle of males. We had the example under Justin Trudeau where literally he doubled the price of our natural gas, not because it was costly to produce the natural gas, but just by definitions like CO2 and global warming, artificially, poof, twice the price to get the same amount of gas. And the money goes to the federal government to fund those gigantic oppressive bureaucracies. It's not necessarily going to be through the conduit of a civil war, but there will be tensions, some of them handled by federal forces, some of them handled by drives to sovereignty. And perhaps we'll have a time at which the states are so different from each other that they can't even live in the same country and they want to separate from each other. I wish that that happens because I think ultimately breaking up and balkanization is going to be the only way, because you're not going to salvage a highly female-controlled, anti-male state that has DEI all over the place.
Absolutely. As long as I've been paying attention as well. I mean, I was first introduced to the idea of national divorce by Kurt Doolittle. I'd come across, it was a guest on your show ages ago. Do you think that's on the table, where it's not so much a war, but it's so much as a like states where people wish to live in and think in a left wing kind of minded, unbounded openness kind of modality, sort of decide to just break away and separate off from those who are right wing minded and wish for order and more of a defined structure to the society. Do you think that there could be just a separation that's, peaceful and what's the word I'm looking for? Voluntary instead of an actually a war? Because I do see what you mean, that right now there kind of is one. It's just being fought through control over bureaucracy, right?
Yes. I think it's possible. I was a Quebecois sovereignist all my life, and I was crying at 9 years old when I saw the result no in 50.4% of the vote in 1995 when Quebec decided to stay in Canada by a very, very small margin. And I eventually had to flee Quebec because of the growing bureaucracy that was attacking my family, trying to kidnap my children. And I fled to Alberta. And in Alberta, there is a respect of parental rights and homeschooling and that kind of stuff. So Alberta, I would totally be for a breakaway of Alberta, a separation. I think it's harder when it's all English people, because they all feel that they're legitimately part of Canada, just like every state is English, and therefore feel that they are part of the USA. Whereas with Quebec, we had also the cultural difference that kind of justified for many leftists were nationalists in Quebec because they felt that they were more leftist than the rest of Canada. So, but I think that as generations go, there will be realization that ultimately we can't live with communists. They are basically a danger. They are a biohazard. And I hope that people realize that they must leave. Now, leaving is never fully peaceful. You'll always have encroachment of the federal government. You'll always have moneyed interests that don't want breakups to happen. But it can be relatively peaceful. But you look at what Quebec did, for example, in 1995, there was massive federal encroachment, threats, and money being thrown for immigrants to just swarm into Quebec to get people to vote no more, to stay in Canada. So it's never really nonviolent. It's always, there's always a component of state oppression coming into a debate around independence.
So there have been many parts of Canada that have had secessionist movements for a long time. Quebec, obviously, one of them. What's the other one? Newfoundland, I think, also had one, right?
A
I think of some.
referendum? I'm not aware. They might have voted on some degree of sovereignty, but not for true independence.
Ah, okay. 'Cause I know there are some in America too. There is what do they call it? Greater Idaho is one of them. That's they
Mm-hmm.
wish to break away and consolidate some of those areas. I think though part of the problem is in America you need I forget what it is. It's a you need a majority vote I believe in both House and Senate, and the requirements are extremely high. The bar is very high for that to actually happen. So I think it's quite a stretch though, right? To get the even if that's the will of the people, it's going to be quite a feat if they really wish to do that. Think there's any hope in that though?
Well, I think it's always wrong in these cases to encroach ourselves with the legalities and technicalities, because those legalities have been invented by state bureaucrats at the federal level very often, Supreme Courts, and that kind of stuff. Like in Canada, you had a decision precisely raising the bar above 50%. It's like we're educated all of our lives to adore democracy, but suddenly when it matters to the people in power, democracy is a loose concept and it's stretchable in some other direction. But I think we should just ignore these technicalities, because down the line it boils down to power and whether people are willing to take their freedom for themselves. And if there was a technicality involved like this, where a federal government or the Supreme Court tries to deny an actual people wanting their liberty at 50% more, there would be ways to handle that. There are ways in which a state could have some power in a leverage against the federal government. You just see how leftist states have effectively withdrawn from federal law application when they start their little revolutions, their riots in Portland or whatever. Mm-hmm. Effectively, the leftists have shown us that some degree of guerrilla warfare is possible against the federal government. And if an entire state was to actually think that they deserve freedom, that there would be many ways they could bar basically entry to outside forces.
I do find that there is permissiveness for the left that there is not for right wing. That they, I think, even in the most extreme forms, like they will be very permissive to. You have open communist parties here in the United States. You have the ACP, the American Communist Party. You have a lot of these kind of just open communist parties. Yet any kind of the exact polar opposite is viciously and mercilessly stifled. So, anything that even approaches some sort of national socialism or some sort of fascistic kind of thing, that the state comes down on that with everything and its might. So, I think that there is something to be said about the state's preference for leftism. I think that they have some. Why do you think that is? Is there a sciencey evolutionary kind of reason for that, or is it just that it's in line with the people in power?
The system is built that way. If you are part of the state, you are paid by the state, and therefore you make a living off of taking taxes. And therefore you don't have an economic interest at serving your population. That is the great reason why if you go at Walmart, you can get good service, you're going to get self-cash out, and within 5 minutes, you get everything you want, you paid for it, and you're done. Whereas if you go to the DMV, you're going to have a fat employee of the state that delays you, that says, I'm going to see you in an hour. Here's your ticket. Why? It's because the employee of the state is not incentivized. The state is not incentivized at serving better. At best, they might want to serve you better. At best, sometimes they get told by their bosses, please do better. But they don't have a deep financial interest in being efficient. They have, in fact, a financial interest at being constantly less efficient. So a bunch of social workers working for Child Protective Service, they don't have an interest in finding that families are all fine and that they're not being violent to their children. So they keep inventing more reasons why they have to intervene in your family. So, oh, well, you're not socializing them properly. Oh, well, maybe they would benefit from being at public school. So you have here social workers making more money, justifying the hiring of more social workers below them, so their jobs become more secure. If you had suddenly police saying, "Oh well, there's no crime here, sorry, we don't need to do an investigation because there's no crime," well, they would get fired eventually because the state is built in a way that assumes expansion. And that's why every state for 100 years, Canada, US, Europe, they all grew in size. Somehow it never gets better. Somehow society gets 100x productive on many things. Like we're 100 times more productive at producing a car today than we were at the invention of cars. But somehow the government is always less efficient with time and needs more taxes and grows in bigger parts of the GDP.
It seems like bureaucracy is at the heart of it, but I guess that then begs the question: is bureaucracy ever a good thing, or is it always, by definition, sort of like an expanding cancer that tends to eat up healthy tissues?
It's an expanding cancer, and wherever there's a bureaucracy, the best thing you can do, the alternative, is to have none. And the private sector will sometimes do that, but the government will almost never do that until they're really forced or until it's really unsustainable. And then they cut swaths of bureaucracy. But it's the only way you really get rid of the bureaucracy. It's by eliminating the whole thing. You eliminate the whole ministry and you start from scratch from what people actually need. But the mechanism for the state to do that are extremely slow because there's not this free market competition. Especially you look at the education sector, for example, basically hasn't benefited at all from the expansion of virtual realities, knowledge, YouTube. None of this has improved public education. We still send our children in the little yellow bus. We send them to a brick and mortar place. And yes, for COVID, we kind of did online courses, but that's it. Then we went back. We immediately went back to the brick and mortar schools. Now, consider this. If the schools were a private corporation that can actually change from charging children $10,000 a year to charging them $100 a year instead, reduce their cost by 100x and offer the exact same service on the internet. The public school will never do this. A company might do this in a competitive environment, especially if people start saying, hey, I can save 100x amount of money on educating my child. Of course, I'm going to do it.
Well, there are a lot of kind of different revolutions, I guess, that have kind of happened in the options for education because people have gotten frustrated with it. You know, you obviously mentioned you're a homeschooler. I think there are a lot of other ones too. I forget what there are. There are charters in America. I forget what else you got, but there's a whole different options. Do you find any of them to be sufficient? Because I think that, you know, I'm sure you're very well aware, like the whole thing about education as we know it, the public schooling system, that was, you know, from the Prussian system to make better factory workers. And, you know, it's not exactly suitable to the modern world as we know it.
Yeah, personally, I love homeschooling. I'm lucky, of course, because I work on the internet and I sell my book. Not everyone can do it, but I say if you can, absolutely, homeschooling is the best option right now. To an extent, I would say that public school was kind of a social experiment and a psyop. I think we have to review what we think of public school and see it really as a psyop that was the most successful psyop ever pulled, which is this idea that my grandfather, he didn't have to send all of his children to the public school. He sent some to the Catholic summer school sometimes. He homeschooled others. He sent some to the public school that seemed to want to go to it. But this idea that the public school is a necessary service that must be given actually comes from a very dark place. And I think it's ultimately, in modern times, it shows in its full color, which is the belief that minorities are entitled to white presence. Basically, what these professors are telling us is, I'm sorry, I have these children that are not particularly intelligent. They are low IQ, they're violent, and I need to integrate them socially. And I believe that your white child might be a good resource for me to pacify them. So we are basically feeding our white children to bullies and violent interventions from other races on the Marxist belief that we will improve these other races to be a little more white. but we have no data that this will happen. This is why it's a whole social experiment. We have no evidence that white prisons pacifies minorities or makes them more intelligent.
No, it's quite the opposite. It ends up just dragging our children down, and our children end up inheriting a lot of their deficiencies. And
Yes.
additionally, you got a bunch of them, and you got a few of our children, especially once they come to be outnumbered. I know that in the United States now, if you're
Yes.
under 18, you are now a no longer a majority as a white kid. In some places, you're an actual minority. And so once you have this, I mean, the whole class has to go slower because the teacher has to give more assistance to the lower, intelligence minority, or well, non-white individuals, often in most cases. So this kind of makes a thing where you're almost guaranteeing your child a bad education. And when you look at this and you're saying why this is done, right? And you mentioned COVID and how they actually did it remotely and then they went right back. Well, I think that this just speaks to that this is just state daycare. This is just daycare so the parents can go back into the workforce.
Yes. And this whole assumption, anyways, that everyone should work, females included, is a bad assumption of modernity. And it's been created artificially by making work less valuable. We made work less valuable when we allowed females into all workplaces and eventually entitled them to jobs that sometimes are not even needed. Through state payments and state employment and eventually state employment insurance. And then eventually the flood of minorities so that work is not even worth anything anymore because you can get cheaper workers. You can get better slaves with the H-1B. You can get a guy that will work at $5 an hour. So all of this has created a situation in which work isn't valuable anymore. There used to be a tension where the employee was bringing a contribution that was unique to the corporation. It was desirable. So corporations would fight to get good employees and pay them a lot so that they can stay, so that what they've learned, they would continue applying it. But we totally destroyed this by basically making the male worker replaceable, the white male worker at least.
No, that's exactly it. I think a lot of these, my girlfriend calls it Jewish daycare when they have these like, time, what we call busy work jobs, basically. And I think that's unfortunately the reality of it. This is the other problem is once they decided that they weren't going to just allow women into the workforce on these, standout exemptions where their husband died or where they had a reason where they had to work, but instead they're just going to flood the workforce and every woman must work and every woman must go to university. Well, now you've diluted the entire workforce. You've 2x'd the entire amount of employees. So obviously there goes down the pay, and so nobody should think this is weird that it's cost so much to you have to earn so much money as a family now to fund the family. When it used to be in a lot of cases one male could go to work and he could get enough pay to sustain the whole family.
Absolutely. The system has put us at war against our reproductive partners. And it has created a line of competition even within the family, which is absolute nonsense. We shouldn't be working in a way that opposes the effort, but that is what women are currently doing. They are working against their own interests because now their males make less, and now it's harder for the family to survive. And it would be easier if they were just not available to the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it also deprives the family. I mean, it's can't be good.
Yeah. And, my grandmother, at times, even if my grandfather was well off and because he operated a mechanic's garage and was the mayor of the local town, my grandmother was going to work sometimes at the cucumber factory in Saint Sophie. We have one of the best cucumber factories, the Potter's pickles. They are excellent pickles, actually, and they are pickled in artesian well water. And my grandmother was, sometimes the family needed a little more money. She was going to work to pack up some cucumbers. That's fine. I'm not against little jobs for women when needed, but it shouldn't be the plan. It shouldn't be the propaganda. It shouldn't be the ideal that is put forward for everyone.
No, exactly. A few, some edge cases that's not a problem, but I completely agree. Um, what do you think in terms of events that might re-steer a lot of these things back on course? Because I was having that discussion today as well. Like, what could actually cause a correction? There has to be something very big, and the response was the power grid has to go down. Do you think that there's something that could actually, you know, um, do a hard reset, I guess, because this kind of transcends all of these different categories, everything from education to science to all of this, even the political aspects. Like, is there something that could just be so sort of all reaching and just sort of large of an event that it could actually just give us a hard reset? That possible?
I think there's a couple of things that are to be looked at from a white pilled perspective. First, Bitcoin rises, and this totally disempowers the states in terms of artificial money injections in society. So now we have a standard for wealth and property that the state will have difficulty putting its claws on, because the state, the bureaucracy, has successfully transformed, for example, the real estate sector into a tax farm. So at this point, you own a house, you're going to constantly pay every year to a bureaucracy that says they are there to gather the trash, but they are the trash and they don't gather themselves. So physical property has this defect that it is easily targetable by communists. Whereas the rise of crypto and the rise of an international standard where everyone wants crypto, like if you have Bitcoin, you can go in Canada and exchange it for Canadian money within an hour. But you can also go to China, you can also go to Russia. And so these openings, they will create an effect where states will, the self-punishment of localities and local bureaucracies will eventually be a high cost, and a high cost by an objective standard. The problem is that for the last 50 years, we've had massive injection of zombie money into the economy through inflation, money printing. And so it allowed the parasites of the state to place themselves in position, and this constant money flow kind of maintained them alive. I believe that we will start seeing actual bankruptcies of certain leftist modes of living. And then the question will be, do they have enough federal power to just basically bail themselves out the way they've done in the past, bail the whole bank system out, bail the whole state of this or that out, or cover the debt in Canada? For example, the provinces that are overspending, they get their debt covered by the productive provinces like oil-producing Alberta. They will try to pull this, but I think that Bitcoin will finally put a standard where there will be a limit to what the states can do, and they will eventually enslave themselves through their debt that will become unsustainable. So that's a big hope, because as they become unsustainable, I think we become less interesting for migrants too. And that is the key. As long as we can sustain fictive social welfare flows, we are destroyable. But as this becomes unsustainable, and as the welfare wage eventually becomes not comfortable for life, these empires of imports that are cities on welfare, that have all these people living in small cubicles but paid a certain amount because they count as one human being to the federal government. This is what we need to focus on. Nick Fuentes has highlighted this, the coming of sex robots. It's going to be great. We're going to have leverage against women, but we won't have this leverage as long as social welfare isn't completely destroyed.
Well, the sex robots will never give children, right? So that's also a problem with that one. I'm glad you brought up Bitcoin and crypto, though. That's interesting. So you actually were someone who was a very early adopter with Bitcoin and crypto. I understand. Is that true?
Yes, I got my first Bitcoin in 2013, given to me by a Reddit guy who sent it to me through a Reddit Bitcoin robot, and I was like, "What is this?" And it was because I was doing a science AMA.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. I hope you held on to that singular Bitcoin at least.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I sold and then I bought it, but since then I bought much more.
That's smart. Yeah, some people predict that this will go to nothing, but I think we've seen, especially in the last year, this sort of rise of the institutional adoption. How do you feel about this? Do you think this is a positive? This is a negative? Do you feel that this will help the value of it, or do you think that this will kind of compromise it? Because I know that I get a lot of takes in both directions when I look into this.
There's no compromising as long as the institutions cannot change the $21 million Bitcoins.
Mhm.
So as long as there's 21 million Bitcoin, the compromising corruption doesn't matter. It's still fixed Bitcoin. What it needs to be is remain fixed. Now, is it a possible, theoretically, that institutions would take over the programming of the Bitcoin core so much that they would eventually make political pressures internally to push for the emission of new coins? Maybe. But I think that would be Bitcoin shooting itself in the foot, and you would have the rise of an alternative blockchain that maintains 21 million Bitcoin only. That is the only criteria to me. Then for the rest, it's all good that everyone gets interested in Bitcoin, because here's a way in which the people can finally get rich. Because back in my days when I was a child and a teenager, and like every young man with desires and dreams wants to become rich, there was no way for me to buy stocks. I was looking
Right.
at the minimal stock you can buy from Apple is $3,000, and I was a child with $100. There was no way for me to grow that $100. Well, now there's Bitcoin, and it's a standard that is absolutely unlike anything we've heard before. It is accessible. There's no people who can block you from it, and even if your government tries, you could find alternative ways to get to it. So we have a phenomenal invention there that can change the world, because ultimately, even the fakery of the stock market itself will get drained out by Bitcoin.
It certainly has a much lower barrier to entry than getting involved in stock purchasing and trading. It's much better for that, unquestionably. But I guess my next question would be, it had a pretty bad day today. It dipped down below 100. So that and I don't know, that is what it is. That's a pretty small dip in the long scheme of things. But I guess the question I would have is, do you think that this will actually be a currency? Because right now it sort of seems to be exactly more like an investment. It's more like an investment vehicle. Do you think that it has a possibility of like returning to a currency where maybe there's like I don't know, like smaller elements that are sold, and you know what I mean? Like is there any kind of spin-off or also I guess I'll pack
Yeah.
this in with another question. Do you like any other cryptos other than Bitcoin?
Well, I'm a big admirer of ETH as a software entity and a new creation. I believe that we have barely touched and scratched the surface of what ETH can do. ETH is a common ledger, a kind of database of the internet, and eventually games will be on ETH. The way they are developing on smaller chains like Polygon, because Polygon is higher speed and faster writing, but it's ultimately the ETH skeleton modified in various ways. So yes, there a lot of the other cryptos, they are exploring directions that are valuable. Monero explores the direction of absolute privacy. ETH explores the direction of a smart blockchain where you can have many tokens and have a public ledger for records, and perhaps eventually people will buy their games on blockchain. So I believe that BTC doesn't get into much of this because BTC has decided to remain mostly a fix of money. And when you ask, well, will it be transactional? I don't think that Bitcoin has to be transactional. I don't think it matters that it is transactional or not, because transactionality is not the standard by which we could fix money. Money is already transactionable, and it would be even okay if it stayed that way forever. That Bitcoin is the ledger of value, of true value, and the American dollar, the Canadian dollar, can be what we do our everyday purchases with. That is not a problem. And it's false to think that Bitcoin would gain from even being a transactional currency. In fact, in a way, it would depurify it. I think it's much more important for Bitcoin to focus on its role, which is a fixed standard for the totality of planet Earth's wealth.
I think that it has proven that it has better returns than pretty much everything else, and that you've seen
Yes.
that for sure. I've also heard just more and more that there will be a time when there just won't really be much left on exchanges. Do you think that time is coming soon, or do you think we still have a ways out before that? In other words, that all the available excess Bitcoin that's floating around is gobbled up by institutions.
Oh, well, it will be gobbled up. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters is demand and offer. And if there is a lack on exchanges, there will be demand. People will be willing to pay a higher price, and there will be people willing to depart of some of the Bitcoin toward those. And there will be rebasement anyway, in the sense that, sure, if tomorrow, instead of being worth $100,000, each Bitcoin was worth $1 trillion, so be it. We're going to deal in that new economy. The idea is that you get to profit along the way, no matter what happens. So don't be scared that there's hoarding. Every piece of hoarding is to your advantage as long as you have Bitcoin.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Have you seen any other that have emerged that you would be interested in? Like I've seen some other privacy coins that have emerged that started to look interesting. Do you have any that look you don't have an angle? Because I know some people think that they're not trustworthy. Zcash made a big run on. Apparently, that's a fork off of Bitcoin. You have any interest in that?
I don't have interest in particular ones, but I see them all evolve, and I think it's a dangerous game to try to play them as investment, because most of them will fail. 99% of the innovation gets gobbled up. That's just how the world works. So I would say if you're about investment, just stay within Bitcoin and ETH, and then follow. You can be excited about the software development without necessarily putting your money in it. And most of the time when you hear about something, it's going to have been a campaign of influence, it's a psyop, and they're trying to get you to buy before they dump the price. So most of the time you'll be a little fish. So my counsel is be excited about the technological developments, but don't necessarily throw your money at them, and see what survives. Down the line, what matters is that we keep exploring the branch of Bitcoin, which is perfecting money, and the branch of ETH, which is perfecting computationality of common human knowledge. And these two branches, there's going to be descendants to them, replacements, there's going to be people who try to do better. But down the line, it's these two directions that matter right now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So we've seen also the rise of different sort of breakaway things. Breakaway, in this case, with crypto, in a way, kind of attempts at a breakaway economy. We've seen the rise of separatism efforts now. I think a lot more. Return to the Land got a lot of media coverage recently. There's been a lot of ones that existed previous to that. How do you feel about these? You've kind of witnessed the whole alt-right thing from the beginning, and a lot of these ideas were kind of really kicked around quite publicly in the alt-right days. Do you think any of these are like promising? How do you feel about them?
Oh yeah, I think that RTTL is excellent. I love Arval. I got to know him back in the days. I interviewed him. He wasn't thinking about this project back then, but eventually he came to build this, and it's kind of a test. It's a test of, will they let us at least be Amish? That's basically how I see RTTL. It's like a legal test. Will the Supreme Court come and bomb you? Because there's lots of talk about what is this event where they bombed a Christian family, Waco, Texas.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So it's like, yeah, they might not let us. They might not let us be Amish. And so I love what Arval is doing, because it creates a legal precedent, and it's also getting the culture evolve. Like, who would have thought that TMZ covers in 2025 white nationalism and how a bunch of white people have decided to live together. That's very good culturally. It's underestimated the quality of what Arval is bringing here. And on top of it, he's testing the legalities, because now you have the whole state and the federal government thinking hard and planning, and there's lots of women with their PowerPoints right now trying to lay out what's illegal about this exactly. What's illegal about this, and why is it that Jews in New York are totally fine?
Oh yeah. No, it's okay when they do it, right?
So I love it. Now, is it the future? I can think of eventually cities of RTTL. Why not? I mean, down the line, the Amish, I've always said it, the Amish is a model that it can work. And what they've done, white people should try doing, because and they're white people, as it turns out. So in a way, they've already done what we would dream of doing.
No, that's actually a fantastic point. Like they already did it. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? On this one.
Yes,
it's a good point. I've actually heard discussion as well about this idea of taking the same principle and applying it to urban environments. Right, having a RTTL kind of thing where you're basically doing the PMA and you're buying up an entire, let's say, neighborhood or apartment complex or series of apartment complexes, and you're doing the exact same thing. And you're just, making it white people only, but you're doing it by this. I think that ultimately, like you said already, this is going to come down to the point where this is going to get challenged through the courts. This is going to end up in the Supreme Court as to whether or not the private member association can be used in this way. And that's going to be the ultimate test of will this process, will this methodology stand up for separatism? At the end of the day, there is... we're going to have to wait and see, I guess. I guess what I'm trying to get at. We're going to have to wait and see whether that this actually works or whether or not it's kind of wishful thinking.
Absolutely. I think it has good chance to work, because I think people are getting relaxed a little bit. Back in my days, you would get basically attacked, harassed, potentially assassinated for thinking that white people have rights. But I think people are digesting it. It's amazing the progress of the culture over 10 years, because I've been at the point where it was the edgiest stuff. And now today, it's actually hard to provoke people on that subject. It kind of lost its edge, its little spiky aspect.
Isn't that part of the Overton window shift, though? Like that it just becomes less and less exciting? Yeah,
but this is what's amazing. That means we won, and that's a beautiful thing. That we won a cultural fight against all odds and against massive moneyed interest.
No, absolutely. It's a testament to the power of advocacy, group dynamics, memes, propaganda, and all this stuff was deployed, and then some, to really just rally around this stuff and push this stuff and push this stuff and push this stuff. Even terms like we already mentioned, like white genocide, like that term was seeded in by Bob Whitaker and those guys, and they pushed this crap until like everybody, it's coming out of the mouths of vice presidents and stuff like that. That is a power and a magic that I don't think we should overlook or ever drop, because it certainly has a lot more to offer us.
Absolutely, the power of the free internet.
You mentioned that a couple times. Do you think that there's been many attempts to try to like corral or monopolize, dominate, control, silence, suppress the internet? Do you think that it's already a genie that's out of its bottle, or do you think that there is still a chance that the powers that be, Jewish and Gentile, can come forth and kind of try to choke it out? Try to box it in, corporatize it even further. Starve it of its wild nature, this kind of thing.
They have tried. I would say that they have done a first generation run on censorship, and they were aggressive on it. It included spans from YouTube to controlling Twitter, and they just choked any sort of creative diversity. But then they failed. They failed largely. I would say this iteration failed because Elon Musk came in as a joker and kind of play the trump card. I think they're going to obviously try again, but they're going to be weaker and weaker, and it's going to take more money and more money. And I believe that the parallel internet, like when you look at the infrastructure of resistance, where if you were to be banned on YouTube, it could be a death sentence for your celebrity 10 years ago. I think it's not totally a death sentence today. And you have Rumble, you have Odyssey, you have X. So the more competition is still there. That's also true of our everyday lives. The more there's competition away from the communist areas, the liberal areas, the more there's places where you can just run to, and that will welcome you. I think this is what we need to keep, because competition down the line will matter, and it will lead to anyone like YouTube who self-punishes by attacking its own creators. They will end up paying the price of their own censorship.
No, that couldn't be more true. I mean, I'm. It's funny because we're actually two different antipodes of this story, because you're kind of the first generation who actually made your way on YouTube. I came into this game after YouTube was out of the question. I came in 2021, where the doors were slammed shut. There was no chance of getting a good channel on there. All this stuff was nailed down. Man, congratulations, you got your monetization back, by the way. But I mean, it's just crazy. And, I'm looking at this like, okay, well, maybe I can make another run into it at this point. But you're right. Because they did that, it gave birth to a whole new plethora of things. Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute, all these other things kind of absorbed that market. That market wasn't going to just go away. Those people weren't going to just go, okay, I guess I'll just never say anything again. So,
yeah, once you tasted edginess, you can't go back.
Oh, yeah. You can't unsee it, right? I wonder if they've learned their lesson, though, because, there was this whole thing. I mean, you saw what happened with YouTube, right, where they got dragged for their handling of COVID. And then they said, okay, we're sorry. And, they kind of backed it off a little bit, or so they say. They didn't completely. A lot of people tried to push back in. Like, I know Alex Jones and Fuentes both tried and were immediately, cut at the neck. So I know that they're not truly as free and liberated as they'd like to have believe. But do you think that
they'll never get better, but they can be constrained, and eventually I think that ideally they would be constrained by law, because we already have laws that are forcing bakers to let in black customers. And so why don't we have laws that force YouTube to accept white positive thinkers? Especially since it's called YouTube, you have an element here of business honesty. You cannot say that this website is all about you, but then not you if you're white.
Oh no, not you. Yeah. No, it's true.
Not you.
Not you. It really is something, and they've actually done studies, and they found that, like, it more than actually the rules, it skews on politics, how they enforce punishment on YouTube, which is really quite sad. I think you're right. I think it needs to be laws. I think there needs to be laws about this stuff, and there's no reason why there should not be some sort of digital Bill of Rights kind of thing that says, no, you can't just ban people for this, these ideological reasons. You can't just ban people because they said mean, hurty words. You can't just ban people or you can't selectively enforce the rules where there's a harsher set of rules for white people than there is for non-white people, or for men more than women, or that should be illegal, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we should be there with current law, actually, because there's antitrust, anti-discrimination laws already on the books. We barely even need an act of Congress. Although an act of Congress would just make it clear that going forward, we also apply the law to YouTube and to white people, which is still an open legal question. Are white people protected from discrimination in America? The leftist view is that no, they're not, and that racism only exists in one direction.
It's kind of wild too, because if you think about it, another aspect is all these big tech companies, especially Google, took government money. They were all fed with government grants. So really what it should be, at least, is that when corporations, quote unquote, private corporations are taking public money, that now they should have to adopt some of that public responsibility of say, at least in America, constitutional adherence.
Absolutely. And under the First Amendment, it's such a shame that that leftists are playing this game of, well, the First Amendment is Congress, it's not YouTube. Well, down the line, Congress is everything now, anyways, because no massive wing of the economy ultimately doesn't stem from the inflationary policies of the American government. So at this point, the whole of society is an act of Congress.
No, absolutely. And I think when you talk about something as proliferated, something as omnipresent as big tech corporations, you can't escape these things if you want to. It's amazing. So with that being the premise, there is absolutely no reason that these kind of laws, constitutional in America, for example, shouldn't apply to private corporations. There's no reason that should be a workaround, because they've done this for the longest time, right? They say, oh, well, yeah, you have the right to free speech, but that only applies in the public space. It doesn't apply in, like it doesn't apply to private corporations. They have an exception. That doesn't make any sense. These public corporations still operate within the entire framework granted them by the Constitution. Why should they be exempt from it?
Absolutely. And that's why even private malls have been held to the First Amendment standard. It's because it doesn't matter that you've opened a private mall with your money. You opened it to the public, and therefore you have to live by American standard and how you will treat speech in it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. The fact that it's private doesn't exempt it. And it's crazy that they're able to just get around it like that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Do you see a resolution in that? Do you see a way that actually wraps up where people don't tolerate it anymore? Because I do think that there is like a level of public backlash that these businesses can no longer continue to do what they do. I think we saw that with the COVID thing and the censorship, where people just it was too much. They couldn't take it anymore, and there was just sort of like a brewing, almost like total distrust of all of these businesses, where they started to realize that this was just going to like absolutely cut off their knees in terms of bottom line and market share. So they started to turn around, and they say, first of course was like the Elon Musk Twitter thing. They started to say, okay, well, maybe not so much, just ban everybody. And then, of course, all these other ones started to follow suit. Then you have Zuckerberg coming out here and going, oh, well, we went a little too far. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure you did. Right. And then, then now you have the YouTube thing. So it makes you wonder. Like, if this process can keep going.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's going to be waves. I mean, they're in an apology wave right now. I enjoy it because it means we won. It means that somehow the little bit of competition that was left, and us screaming about it to 5 people on Rumble as we try restarting our channels, somehow that was enough. And so, yeah, ultimately, when you fight nature, it comes back galloping. And that is what we have here. These leftists have overplayed their hands so hard during COVID. They became obnoxious to everyone. So much so that at this point, you have normies sharing anti-Zionist, Jewish critical content. And it's, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect that the million views Candace Owens would be there talking about Jews every day in 2025. I thought it would be a victory if we can get 10,000 people interested in this. Now there's millions. So, yeah, very white pilling. And it tells us that, yes, there will be waves where they try to come back and put more controls. But down the line, we won one fight, and we're probably going to win the others.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, even when I started talking about this a few years ago, it was still very taboo, and I always thought, okay, well, I got some pushback from people in my life. I got some pushback here and there. I always said the same thing. I said, within a decade, everybody's going to talk about this issue: Jewish supremacism, how they treat white people, their wielding of power, all the mechanics of how that works. That is going to be water cooler discussion, and whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. And you're just gonna accept it when it does. And that's what I told people, and they're like, oh, sure. And then eventually exactly what happens is that, you have, like you just said, Candace Owens talking about it, and millions of people, Dan Bilzerian, all these kind of people that you wouldn't have thought, you know, people that used to be MAGA people that are like gone full blown like Wignat mode, like what's his name, Stu Peters and these kind of people. Would have never seen it. You know, they wouldn't have touched the Jewish question with a 6 million foot pole, you know, 5 years ago. And now they're all over it, you know?
I swear, Mom, these ideas are going to become mainstream.
Exactly. That's it. What do you think is left? What do you think is left as far as taboo topics that need to be discussed? Because, you know, that one was a big one. I didn't think that one would break through. And, you know, race is kind of like, it's gone slower, surprisingly. But, you know, there was no like, you know, it's weird because you would have thought like BLM would have been the October 7th for the race question, but still kind of not so much.
I think that there's an important question that hasn't pierced the normie mind, although it's there, it's hanging, but it's a little bit more like the Jewish question 10 years ago. And it's the woman question. I believe that people have a massive instinct at avoiding this question, at not finding women guilty of anything. And it's like, no, we're going to have to come to grips with the idea that women are the Trojan horse through which Jewish power has been so negative onto white society. And if they weren't there to vote for these powers, if they weren't there to prop up these powers through their role in the corporate sector, if they weren't there to keep the female morality to be the standards of the working world now, and the internet to some extent, the woman question has not been fully faced. And we're going to have to face the fact that it's these women who censored us. You know, you can complain about the Jews all you want, but they had women in position of executive power to censor us. And it's ultimately female control of morality and teaching that causes the situation we've seen with censorship.
Well said. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, so feminism itself was very predominantly, especially second wave feminism, predominantly overrepresented by Jewish women. But in general, it's true. I mean, all of these leftist ideas are possible through the female vote. There is, I think you're right, a reluctance to criticize, and I think there's a reluctance in the fear that the criticism will evolve into just straight up woman hate. And I get that. I mean, I think that can go too far. You know, it's kind of like the boomer thing, right? Like there's a lot of criticisms for the baby boomer generation, but you know, I think at the same time that can be moderated. It doesn't have to be vicious or blaming them for things they couldn't control as a group. But, you know, I think there's a fear that if we start criticizing this and start delving into this element, that, you know, this will become some kind of weird, like, you know, I don't know how to say it. I guess kind of like bathhouse nationalism kind of thing, and that's, you know, definitely not what we want. How do people broach
there's
it?
the problem. This is how female power intimidates. It's every guy is scared down the line that he's with basically his own local house dictator. And every guy is scared of talking about women on the internet because they know there's a woman waiting for them in the bed, and they interpret any sort of critique of women. They interpret as, oh well, we still need them, and so we better be kind to them and all. But it's like, no, we need to completely change this and go back to a place where public engagement is largely a discussion between men. You ladies can have your little podcast about how to chop pears or how to make desserts or whatever, but it's like you're never quite going to get it, and you should stay out of it, because ultimately politics should be the division of power and the protection of the common good by men who understand that the outside world is hostile to the nation, and that the nation is impossible without an absolute bubble of protection. Now, women will never understand this one because they haven't evolved for this. They evolved to get fucked by whoever was there. And if it's an invader, it's an invader.
Yeah, no, I mean, politics absolutely should be a realm of men. I don't think there's any excuse to have women in politics. It's as absurd as having women in the military, the police, the fire force. This is retarded. I don't think this helps anybody. including them. I think most women don't want to
Yes.
be, women call 911. They don't want to see another fucking woman cop show up. They just don't want that, This is ridiculous.
Oh, thank God. A blonde woman cop. Save me from these rapists.
It's true, man. How do you think it gets broached, though? I mean, because there is a sensitivity about it, and there is, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe it's just that feeling of like, a locality.
I think it's the same thing as leftist and COVID and medical fascism and censorship. They overplay their hands anyways, and so right now there's basically license by the state for any woman to take their child, run away, make false allegations against their husband, and live the rest of the child's life up to 18 years old, up to adulthood, without any contact to the husband. And the more this happens, the more they're overplaying their hands. And there's a generation of kids rising who would have been raised solely by a feminist, deluded woman, psychotic woman, and they're going to be pissed at the world, and they're going to eventually reclaim a rebalancing of the male to female balance of our society.
Yeah, I think that
because there's nothing more hurtful, there's nothing more annoying than being raised as a male into a woman environment. Woman teachers at elementary school, woman moralizers at high school, woman trainers in counseling you for your future career, woman college teachers, woman PhD trainers in labs, woman at home, single mother home. This is painful for any sort of man with any sort of testosterone. And eventually there's going to be an army of people who are like, what happened here? It seemed that the past was different.
No, it makes sense. That makes sense. That's exactly it. When you're a young man, I mean, it's all day, right? It's at home, mom's at home. If there's even that much traditionalism, and then you have women at school all day. It's like you're exposed to women nonstop. It's the female perspective, and so that's how you get a gynocentric social order, because it's that's all you got all day, and then the men are either they're busy at work or they don't want to deal with it, or both.
Yeah. And we need to face the fact that woman presence is a toxic pollutant to an extent. And there's a study on birds. You have male birds, they're singing. Beep, 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 beep. And you put a female around them. Suddenly they're singing straighter. They enter performance mode. So when they were left alone, they were in practice mode. They were exploring, they were curious, and they were trying various tones. You put the female there, they become straight performers. Now they can't learn anymore. They can't improve, but they perform their best because there's a female there. That is how it feels for a male to be around a female at all times. It's we have to put on a mask to adhere to female moral standards of politeness, of looking okay. It's like you enter the pleasing mode, just like the bird. We need spaces where we don't have to please to women. And if these places are the public space, then that's also good, because the public space has always been, anyway, an arena of wires and politicians fighting for control of the world.
No, well said. So do you think that this issue can be kind of rectified by returning to a more traditionalist kind of arrangement? We had these differences in spaces. I mean, if you look at a lot of the religions in the world, Islam in particular, which might be one of their strengths, actually, is they segregate by religion. So does fucking Judaism, for that matter, where they don't, the men and women aren't together in prayer and stuff. Do you think that even just more in the day-to-day life, where we used to have separations of gender norms, where men had men's work, women had women's work, and this was all just respected, do you think that there's a chance we could just return to that, and that might rebalance this issue a bit?
Absolutely. It will return naturally, but we can force the return by making it happen the fastest we can. But down the line, there's sexual dimorphism. And we are a species on which the rules of sexual dimorphism apply. And it is entirely against their own genetic interest that these butch-looking hairy females are trying to accomplish male work. they can't anyway physically. And so eventually the evolutionary punishment comes back, and eventually all of these temptations of modernity of I want to be a 250-pound female fireman eventually show their impossibility, because the 250-pound female lesbian fireman doesn't produce babies. And so the next generation, her problem is solved.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more of her wanting to be a firewoman.
Do you think these distortions kind of are connected to this rise of transgenderism? Because I really think that there's some connection there. I mean, there's probably a multifactorial element there that's producing so many damn fucking transgenders. But you know, I've seen more and more of them, even in small town areas, where it's like, wow, why is this? This statistically shouldn't even be possible. Do you think that this is connected?
Well, it's all connected. I tend to see transsexualism as, well, first and foremost, you have the you have the desirability of the female, because the whole world is built around men want to accomplish themselves so they can acquire a female of quality. And this overvalues beauty and overvalues the symbols of charm and potential sex, which is what leads to porn. Porn is an exploitation of this signal opportunity. Everyone wants to see a female naked because they all dream of having one like this. Now, the trans phenomena comes in and offers an opportunity at a male who will never be desirable physically, even if you're a beautiful male. Actually, there's no one who's going to dream about you for your body. And so it gives the opportunity to male to get a little bit of that narcissistic reward of attention by stealing the female appearance, because that's what's so valuable. That's what happens on one hand. On the other hand, there is this societal attack on naturalism and this societal attack on nature. So they want to attack all concepts that stem from nature, and sex is one of them. Sex is one of them in which we are entirely trapped. For better or worse, whether you like it or not, the Marxists, they hate sex because sex is so much the seat of competition and social distinguishability. They want to equalize everything, so they see sex as this kind of thing of nature that needs to be fought against. But they are deluded, because there's no way we're becoming a non-sexual species unless we do the revolutionary phenotype. So here it ties back to the revolutionary phenotype, which is that the ultimate dream of leftists is only accomplishable through one way, and not their current way. Their current way is cultural combating of forces. And by doing so, they punish themselves, just like the butch fire woman. So the only way they can achieve their equality is by actually eliminating sex. And they would get this only if they were to have a machine determine the genes of the next generation, and have artificial wombs, and have the possibility to abandon part of their genetic heritage for accomplishment of a perfect form. But that is basically genetics from the bottom. Our evolutionary history is genetics from the top. It's the top male breeding with the top woman, choosing themselves, and therefore driving us towards success in that way. They want to invert the pyramid. They want to take the laws of society and make them better. But they can only do so through a massively genocidal eugenic project, which is the literal genocide of letter by letter of your DNA through modification by AI.
Wow. Do you think that this is sort of like, basically you could describe this maybe in a sense that there's a fear of using these technologies to basically create a systematic dysgenics where the lowest is being prioritized, and not just well, in the sense that, you know, they're communizing genetics basically.
Yes, it's the fear. It's what I described in chapter 12. Is you're not going to get a free thinking, forward going human species under central control of genetics. Because when you start having central control, you start having the exact same evolutionary phenomenon you have in bees and ants. So they have a queen centrally controlling the genes of the working classes, and the working classes are sterilized. Why are they sterilized? The selfish gene doesn't allow this. Why would you sterilize? You can't do this in biology. Well, as it turns out, you can if you work to the success of the central entity. So the reason the sterile worker ants are allowed by the theory of evolution is that they help their queens make more queens that make more sterile workers. So that's the cycle. Now, if we get into this cycle with an AI, what happens is complete submissiveness of the human civilization to the AI. So imagine a world in which you're not even caring about your body. And imagine a world in which the importance that you would today attribute to your own children, you now attribute it to your queen, to your central AI, to your medical clinic where your children got modified. That is the world we're headed for if we let genetic modification comes. It's that we're going to start adoring our queens. And there will be queens controlling human societies in various ways. And ultimately, human civilization will no more be a race for every individual to become better versions of themselves. It will be a race between the queens and how they manage their slave societies. So you'll have absolute diminishment of intelligence to the point where we will become machine-like. No self-control, no self-regulation for the pursuit of success or curiosity. We will be modified to simply help the collective, because it's the collective that will carry the genetic interest of the queen, of our AI queen. That is what I describe in my book. That is why it's so dangerous to be doing what Sam Altman is doing.
You had said, I think it was in your stream today, actually, that it's almost like they read your book and then said, "Ha, that's a good idea. Let's do the thing I warned against." It's
exactly.
It's awful. It's almost like they want the bad result. It's almost like they want the bad outcome, and you have to wonder, like, is this just a deliberate evil? Is this a deliberate anti-human kind of thing here? What is it, anti-natalist kind of approach? What is going on here?
And you know, I find myself in front of this title. It's unbelievable to me because I predicted this years ago that it was going to be gay Jews, basically, that would start it.
Of course it would, yeah.
because gays are faced with the problem they can't make their own children, and Jews are faced with the problem that they hate themselves and they hate the whole of humanity. Combine these two forces and you get everything you need for a genetic eugenic program. Yeah, it is ultimately, you say anti-human. It's that the Jewish mind is deeply anti-nature. It's deeply cradled in this delusion that we have moved beyond, that we are something else than the monkeys. And that is a problem. That is a problem because when you think you're something else than the matter around you, when you forgot that you're part of the compost pile, as they say in Fight Club, then you start thinking that you're above it. And you start thinking, well, let's bring everyone with me. Let's bring these other monkeys toward this greater project, this kind of godlike state that I've achieved. And that is what fuels this advancement toward eugenics.
It's like a savior complex, right? And I think it's part and parcel with this thing where they've been told that they're the chosen specials, that they're somehow, little fragments of God himself and all this kind of stuff. There's been this sort of deification of Jews to the point where, like, some of these particular, like, evangelical Christian pastors literally advocate for literally worshiping Jews as, like, wow.
And so, Eric Weinstein was very clear about this. He said, you know what the chosen thing means? Because he was pissed off at people calling him a chosen derisively. But he said, chosen means that we have a responsibility to carry humanity forward because we gave humanity bombs, and he was describing the nuclear bombs. He said, we gave humanity bombs that could destroy it, and we have a moral responsibility to elevate humanity away from this self-destruction. So when you delude yourself into thinking that you have it that much, you are taking the route of abridging what nature could have brought. And nature is still the last arbiter of what exists. And the theory of evolution requires something that people can't really conceive of. how important it is, but it's random. And if you read chapter 9 of my book, I describe how ultimately the random mutations are better than what you could want. The random mutations guide you toward anything, whereas what you want is these little dreams that you have of having a blonde-haired child or a blue-eyed child. Those are all superficial. Like imagine if a frog had failed at becoming a lizard because it liked the squishy legs. Imagine if a hamster had failed at become a monkey because it kind of liked the hamster form. You cannot decide where you're headed. You are always better leaving it at random and leaving natural selection than do its work on random. That is how good sculpting work in a way. You let randomness shape a form, and then you sculpt it to your desires, and you let natural selection come in. That is how life gets good. Life doesn't get good if we follow the program of what is good by the definition of whatever modern woman wants. And I think that it's ultimately a male thing to understand this, to understand that the world is better to be let to become whatever it needs to become, rather than try to shape it and control it.
Very well said. I mean, well, I think we've been almost on for a couple hours, so I think we'll wind down and get to super chats. But before we do, I want to throw in one last question about what you just said. You described evolution as random, and I think it's usually described that way. But I would ask, do you think it actually is random? Because I think that what seems random to us is not actually on a higher level of the cosmos. You know, where from nature's perspective, or from the let's say sort of collective intelligence of nature, that it knows precisely what it's doing. It just seems from where we stand as random, you know. Whereas for an ant, what we do might seem very random. You know, like it's just a matter of where you're looking on the cosmos.
Well, the way I would look at it is think of a car and think of someone who would ask the question, is a car explosive?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is there's an explosion happening in the engine. That explosion is kind of taken by a whole system that's ready to take that force and transform it into a wheel rolling. Life is just like this. Is it explosive? Is it random? Well, life is random because mutations come in at random. If they're not random, in fact, you don't evolve. That's what I describe in chapter 9. They have to be random because randomness is the only thing that will find stuff that you wouldn't have seen if you weren't random. An engineer wouldn't have thought of building a hamster, but life did, and it did it through random. So the randomness part is like the engine of the car. It's there and it needs to be there, but you need something to control it. And what controls it is natural selection. Natural selection is not a random process. Natural selection is kind of fate applied the same way the transmission of the car applies to the explosive nature of the engine. The natural selection comes in to tame randomness and to transform it into something that makes sense.
That's an elegant description. Yeah, no, I can see that. It's. I think it's certainly something that I don't think we have a total grasp on, though. Would you say that's correct? I think that's right. I don't think we totally understand the process. I think we have a basic understanding, but I don't think it's totally conceptualized fully. Do you?
I think if you're aware of the main axis of biological thought, you understand the entirety of the world and what needs to be understood. I think there's a lot of people who think that there's some massive patchwork needed to understand evolution. I think they just don't understand it. But if you know about it, if you've read Dawkins, if you've read The Revolutionary Phenotype, and if you've thought about it and how it explains everything, I don't think we're missing that much. Sure, there will always be incomplete knowledge. There will be some patching work and some understanding maybe of complex ecologies. Mm-hmm. But I find myself absolutely satisfied that the current state of evolution explain the entirety of planet Earth.
Well said. Well said. I think we should go to questions. I think I was being pressed to ask them. So let's check it out. Scrolling up here. Let's see. Oh, well, again, no. No, I think that's it. And I hope a lot of what you've characterized kind of does work out. I mean, I hope that that there is a recorrection in this stuff and that it is taken out of the hands of those who wish to derail it and that the priorities are set right. Because I think you characterized it in a way that they're not right as it is right now. And the
No.
truth seeking needs to be restored.
Oh yeah.
A question
Absolutely.
a question for you. It says, Chain Reaction asks, ask JF if he still believes the Casimir effect is a more viable model than current gravity. And if so, have there been any new breakthroughs since the last interviewed Ray Fleming? He said, it stayed on my mind since that episode.
Well, I think it's a fascinating direction. And I think that Mike McCullough's quantized inertia is the proper direction for physics. I believe that, yes, ultimately it boils down to a form of Casimir effect happening at another scale with an absolutely different source, but that down the line, things may be attracting each other because they're shadowing the rest of the universe. And that is basically the component that's fascinating to me, that makes it a form of Casimir effect. But I believe that the framing of Mike McCullough is so much more detailed, and ultimately I'm not a physicist, so I'm just looking at these things in terms of how much insight they give me, and I'm like, wow, that is powerful. The quantized inertia as a system of describing gravity is extremely powerful, and you'll have to see the papers of Mike McCullough to understand the extent of this.
Wow.
So the Casimir effect is this idea that when two plates are so close to each other, there are certain quantum vibrancy mode that cannot appear, because you can see the quantum world as constantly trying to birth particles but failing at, which is why something like the void or vacuum can exist. But you can see that there's a constant wrestling of particles to try to get into existence. And when you take two plates and you put them so close together that there's not even space for these fictive particles to try to get into existence, you end up having the two plates attracting each other. Amazingly, they attract each other because the virtual particles on the outside are pushing the plates in. Now, it's a very small force, but it's a force that has been detected and that actually exists in the universe. And we have to think that, therefore, outside pressure from the quantum void does have a pressure effect, and some similar explanation can be invoked for thinking about gravity.
Wow. I never even heard of this before. That is an interesting thing to think about. Okay. Next down there. Brandon Hunt says, bottom line, too many J's and N's. This is what he said. Thank you, Brendan, and thank you, Chain Reaction. All right, we're next here. Let's check here. It's kind of spread out all over the place. Foyd Rage says, great guest. Oh, thank you, Foyd Rage. I agree. Modern Viking says, support the show and share the links. I agree. I think. Oh wait, I'm missing that. Really spread out over several services. Dylan, he says, great show, Nick, quality content as always, and much respect to JF. And he gives you a salute. Well, thank you, Dylan. I appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody who supported the show. I thank you, JF, for coming on and suffering through my rusty interview style. It's been a while since I had any guests on. So
it's been a great interview.
Thank you.
There's
thank
worse.
You. It's been a fun discussion, and I think we covered a lot of different topics. So that was fun.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'll encourage everybody to check out the book, check out his now re-energized and revitalized YouTube channel that's coming back with a passion and a fury. And
if you want my upcoming book, I'm currently working on a book called White People Food.
Tell us about it. I was told to ask about this. Tell us about it.
Well, it's going to be an anthropological look at white recipes from Russia, Norwegian, Finland culture to Quebecois, American, and it's going to be the ultimate encyclopedia of everything that white people do with food.
That sounds pretty cool. That sounds pretty cool. Because that's the thing, right? That's what they always say when the mass migration thing is brought up. That's always been the excuse as to why we should allow it.
The tacos.
Yeah, the tacos, right?
Yeah, I want to make a counter case that there's better than tacos.
It needs to happen, man. That's a terrible excuse, right?
Yes.
We went extinct because the tacos were so good. Kermie also says, "Hail JFG, been listening since Bloodsports." He also wanted me to ask you about that before we wrap up here. I'd found this channel. I guess it's like an archive of the old days internet Bloodsports stuff. These I mean, here's one with you and Enoch, and here's one with you and Duke, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here like way back when. This is classics. Yes. What is your feeling about all that now, looking back in the in the rearview mirror?
Oh, very proud of this moment. We had a window of liberty opened, and we maximized our use of it. And there's no way I could have acted in ways that would push the cultural points more efficiently. It's amazing what we've accomplished. And I consider that still the world is still recovering from this era. I believe that we haven't even gone through the full cultural penetration of what we've accomplished then. And the Candace Owens of this day are just downstream effects of what we've done then. And we've created this out of nothing. This idea that we would talk about super chats about Hitler and, all these edgy ideas we were discussing, they eventually came to be normified within 10 years. I don't know of anything else that got normified that fast. And it all happened under my care. And to me, it's one item of pride. Forever, I can live with these realizations on my CV. Not that it will get me hired, but my CV for death, my CV for the tomb.
No, that's a fantastic answer, and I do think it had a really big effect. Even because I joined into all this stuff way after this point, but this was all still very frequently discussed. After all that time, a lot of the personalities that came out of this era were still around and still are now. And I think, yeah, absolutely, you're right. It pushed the Overton window really hard.
Show the real ones, because take a Arval who's on my show as some kind of nihilist thinker, loosely thinking about white people then, and now take what he's done today. It's like, here are some of the real ones. Here are some of the ones who are in it for 10 years and they will weather through the storms.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that must be kind of refreshing, I guess, or I don't know, inspiring is the word I'm looking for, to see this, right? People that have suffered through to achieve great effects in a lot of cases.
Yes.
That's it. Nick Fuentes trolling the porn star on TPS was so good. I don't remember that. Was it?
I was with this porn star, and I'm like, I think you need a correction by a real man. And I call Nick Fuentes, and I'm like, can you join the live stream? I have a porn star. And he shows up, and people just wanted to. That's what we call then thought policing. They just wanted him to yell at her that she's unclean, and he actually was more kind to her than people wanted. People wanted more blood, but he was actually quite respectful and just saying, look, you're a lost soul. I pray for you.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an awesome one. I have to go find some of this stuff because this really is. I don't know whose archive this is, but it's pretty wild. This one's called American Pride.
If you
1
want
and 2.
a more complete archive, go to Alt Censored and search just TPS. You're gonna get most of them.
I know about Alt Censored. That's a good one. Let's see. TPS. Let's see. Yeah, I'm human. Okay, yeah. Oh, what do we need? We need plugs. Okay, plugs. We're doing plugs. Hopefully we evolve past that thing. Oh boy.
Oh, maybe it's not the right, because they changed their URL, but okay, there it is.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch. Okay.
You just search TPS and
yeah, just TPS.
yeah.
Oh, wow. I found you a lot of your stuff is still on archive as well. Archive.org has a whole bunch as well.
Okay.
Oh wow. Well, that's pretty cool. That's a good resource as well there. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you coming, JF. It's been a blast, and hope you'll come back sometime.
All right. Anytime, let me know. Bye-bye.
Take care. Good night, sir. Okay. Let's solos thing. Solo thing here somewhere. There it is. Okay. Well, there goes JF. Appreciate him coming on. Please do subscribe and follow his stuff. He is his, as I said to him, his YouTube is remonetized. So yeah, help him out, get that thing pumping. Yeah, I think YouTube is coming back a little bit, and congratulations on that. So check him out. All the links will be in the description. Thank you to everybody who supported the show. Thank you everybody who turned up and who watched. Thank you everybody who shared the links. Please hit the like button on the way out, and thank you again to JF Gariépy for coming on. Good night, everybody. Have a good start to your weekend. Good night. One of the best ways you can support the show right now is to order one of these fantastic new books from our sponsor, bannedbyamazon.com. Use code NNR for a 10% discount on a fantastic selection of books, media, and more. You can also support the show by ordering books from antelopehill.com. Receive 5% off your order with code NNR. They have an extensive collection of literature that is banned and rarely available. antelopehill.com, code NNR. Banned by Amazon, code NNR.
One truth can break a foundation as though it were made of glass. One truth can